Good afternoon, Carmen. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Harshit. How are you?
I am great because I believe you're the first property manager on our Q&A because we have different aspects of property. And now having you here, I'm really excited because this is a very exciting topic, especially for Victorians.
Yes, I mean, has been a lot of changes in the last 2 years in Victoria, as you know.
And to be honest, I was just going through your LinkedIn profile, Carmen. I would like to know more about you because the kind of depth, you have decades of experience in property management. I was intrigued by seeing your profile and what you do, and as well as 60 plus 5-star Google reviews. That's amazing.
Yes, and I'm very, very fortunate because, I haven't had to prompt the Google reviews. They've come just naturally. And that comes from us caring about clients. And that's one of my biggest things is that both landlords and tenants are cared for. And, they're respected and their properties are looked after.
That's amazing. Carmen, a little bit about you. How long you have been in this industry? I know Puru knows you well because you both are part of the same BNI chapter. I have visited your chapter as well. I've seen your energy in the room. So I would like to know more about you, Carmen.
Okay, then. I fell into property management in that I started off my career working for a barrister in family law. And then went into travel, and then I started my family, and I then realised a little way down the line that I needed to go back into the workforce, but I didn't want to go back into travel with the hours, and I took a part-time position in welfare housing. So I did welfare housing for 7 years. So I worked with domestic violence victims, crisis accommodation, youth housing. So I have got that empathy there, and a lot of real estate agents don't have that with regards to people from that sector. I mean, there is good and bad everywhere, and there are some really good people that are on Centrelink and who make very, very good tenants. I then moved on to a part-time position, or it was a maternity position for a real estate agent for 6 months, and I ended up staying there 17 and a half years.
Oh,
so, yeah, and then I decided that I needed to stretch myself a bit, and I went over. I got offered a position in the southeastern suburbs and worked for Buxton for 2 years. And then I came back to Wyndham and helped someone set up their business. And then eventually I have been able to start Wyndham Property Management with my 2 partners.
Wow. And I think you guys are unstoppable.
And I've born and bred in Wyndham as well. So I've seen Wyndham grow. And I have also lived overseas. So, I am used to dealing with people of different nationalities. I'm very multicultural. So, and I've also taught English as a second language to migrants. So I've got an extensive background working with immigrants as well.
Wow, Carmen, what you explained, what you mentioned about your career, how you transformed 7.5 years in that kind of, so I think that is the key difference if I have to describe Carmen in the industry among any other property management. That's the uniqueness you bring to the table and your team brings to the table?
Yes, I think it is. We look at all aspects of both landlords and tenants. As you know, there's good and bad in every race. So, and we treat them with respect as well, and we listen. We listen to what they want and what they need. Yeah,
that's amazing. And since I have Puru as well, Puru, you live in Point Cook. you are well aware of Wyndham. And, I lived in Point Cook 8 years almost, and now I've moved. But uh, I have a question. This question is for Puru, as what sets Wyndham apart from other regions in terms of people moving in from migration and quality of life?
Yeah.
And then the second question related would be for Carmen, that what sets Wyndham apart from other regions in terms of property management challenges and opportunities? So first, about over to Puru to say that what's there in Wyndham, because you are local, you have been going to multiple events and all that. So.
Yeah, so Wyndham is home, of course, so there's a natural bias, but I try to balance my response based on the 10 years of life I've seen here, the way things have changed. To people who are listening in and who are not from Melbourne, they might not understand, but Wyndham is one of the southwestern councils, one of the fastest growing councils in the whole Australia region, very popular for a lot of migrants who are trying to go into their first homes. Specifically Point Cook, if I talk about, it's a suburb which has grown leaps and bounds, around 75,000 plus residents here, and very white collared suburb in that sense, very multicultural. At some point it had the highest number of IT managers in Australia. It had the highest number of mix of multicultural mixes in Australia, and traditionally any suburb which has a very good mix of multicultural settlements shoots up in growth in the long run. It is a phenomena which is seen consistently in most of the suburbs which have grown across Australia. So Wyndham has 5 or 6 different major suburbs. So Point Cook is one of them. Then we have Werribee, Hoppers Crossing. We have Truganina, Tarnate. I'm sure I'm missing few small ones. Leverton. Is that right? Leverton is Wyndham?
Williams Landing.
Williams Landing.
Yeah.
So it's a very lively council, and I use the term, there is a energy in Wyndham which I have not seen any other councils, at least in Melbourne. I've been living for 21 years, so I'm talking with a lot of confidence. The hunger of thriving as a community, there is a hunger of breaking that ceiling to really succeed in whatever you're doing as a job or a business. The festivals are celebrated equally well. Coming from Indian background, Holi and Diwali is a big thing. You can see the streets getting closed, people just enjoying together, and all the backgrounds of different communities come together. So absolutely, even my friends from other councils, from other parts of Melbourne itself, they come here and they say we have not seen anything like that. So it's absolutely brilliant. I think rest Carmen will explain.
Yep. The reason, just one statement for the audience, the reason I especially talked about the council, because Carmen has her property management. She manages all the property in the West, which is mostly under Wyndham Council. So that's why we're just talking about that. And that was the reason for asking Puru that how much he loves where he lives. And now, as an opportunity as well, there are challenges as well, Carmen, right? Because you see the same opportunity from a different lens as well. So what are the challenges and opportunities from the perspective of property management in Western suburbs or in the Wyndham Council?
Well, the challenges that we've had in the last 12 months has been the impact of government decisions and the implementations that they've put into force with investors, with land tax, compliances, minimum standards. I mean, a lot of these things needed to happen when you compare it to other states that don't have minimum standards. Wyndham does offer affordability to people to be able to have their families grow up in a safe environment with good schools. We do have transport. Like any suburb or area that's a growth suburb, you do have your challenges with infrastructure in place to meet, the needs of the people that are moving in here. But yeah, we do offer affordable rental properties. I think we've got that over a lot of other suburbs in Melbourne, and we have got some very, very good schools. And Peru could probably agree with that, with having 2 daughters going through school in Point Cook at the moment. And I can say that we haven't got discrimination here in Wyndham. We're very accepting to immigrants coming into the area. You know, there is a high population of Indian immigrants. We have a lot of Karen, which are Burmese refugees that come in here. And with council and with government, they do have support with AIMS and Redback and different organisations. So we're very, very fortunate that tenants have got that on hand, you know, and residents do have that support in the community.
Yep, out of curiosity, because as a buyer's agent, right, so we look for investments all across Australia, and Victoria hasn't been great due to government policies. Nothing against Victoria. I love Victoria. I live in Victoria. And so, Puru, the question is, from Victorian perspective, we have seen, I would like Puru pick his brain on this. We have seen a lot of investors are running away from Victoria, and that applies to Wyndham, any council, whatever. So, and then we are seeing a lot of people, we have affordable suburbs, great culture and everything. So what is your observation, Puru, in Wyndham, because you have lived in western suburbs? So what do you think? Still people are moving in? You see people buying houses in that area, tenancy and all that?
It's partially true what you said. It's a little bit to do with what you and I do. We do a lot of investments outside Victoria. We have started doing in Victoria as well more lately, because we play a lot in growth suburbs, the top 15 growth suburbs across Australia. But on the other side, there are a lot of Sydney investors who are buying a lot in Wyndham and Melton, specifically these 2 areas. And the reason is simple. Sydney is a stock exchange city. So it has a hangover of stock exchange as a culture. Any big stock exchange city like Singapore, Bombay, London, New York, Hong Kong, they think and breathe in a very different way to the remainder of the other cities in the world. So they sniff in millions. That's the term I use, right? So when Sydney-siders look at these areas which have good land sizes, open spaces, homes which are 450 plus square meter homes, and there they can't afford anything in $1 million, they are coming in hordes. I was talking to Carmen the other day. There is a lot of buying happening in Melton, Wyndham areas for investors who want to have a piece of land, because land is not manufactured anymore, right? So they understand that. No one understands more than a Sydney person. Beyond Blue Mountains, they just have a way to go in the second, third dimension only, right? So when they look at a city like Melbourne with good train connections, a lot of schools, a lot of migrations, they are buying it. So it depends on the intent of the buyer, the mindset of the buyer. They did stop for a while because of the land tax, the tenancy laws, and a few other things which Carmen mentioned. Does it make sense, Harshit?
Yeah, definitely. But I would like to validate that, because that's our view as you live in that. As you mentioned that starting, even I'm biased because I lived there for 8 years. Now I'm in eastern suburbs. You live there. So Carmen, what do you see there? Because you have been operating in this area, Wyndham itself, for the last 20, 25 years. You have seen the market ups and downs, government policies. Are you seeing investors, because if there are not many properties, if investors are moving out of Victoria, looking at some other opportunities, then did you see that has impacted your business? In the last 2-3 years,
it has. In the last 12 months, it's impacted our business dramatically. The average is 1 in 4 investors have left the market. They've sold. With properties going on the market for sale, only 1 in 9 are being purchased by investors. That was up until about 2 months ago, but I'm now seeing a turnaround in that we are getting a lot of inquiries from investors in Sydney who are purchasing in Victoria now. which is really, really good to see. And unfortunately, with everything that came in, all the changes and all the mortgage interest rate rises and, just the general cost of living, there was a lot of people that were investors that really couldn't afford to have an investment property. They entered into it blindly, and it just took a couple of things to be announced, and especially with the land tax, for them to exit the market and sell. As you know, it's all tax deductible at the end of the day, but you have to have the money up front to be able to, in the first place, to be able to afford to have one. In the past, properties had been not maintained as well by a lot of landlords, so it did sort of thin out the market of those properties that weren't up to standard. I will not lease or take on a property that is not up to minimum standard. I won't take a property on. There's too much liability with it as well. So, you had people that had properties that had them for like 25, 30 years, and all of a sudden they've had their electrical compliances done, and they've had to change their switchboard, upgrade their switchboard, they've had to upgrade wiring, they've had to have cupboards altered in their kitchen because their range hood wasn't the right height from the cooktop. So, but now that's starting to ease off, and, people are getting on with it. Those people know that they need to have these things done. When I go and do a lifting, I make them fully aware that they need to get compliances done, their gas, electrical, smoke alarms. And if there's any work that needs to be done, I'll let them know before we list the property so that they know what they're up for.
And that's where my next question is. It is from the audience, which I got. How do you balance the need and expectations of both landlords and tenants, especially when there is a conflict of interest?
It's all about education, okay? At the end of the day, we work for the landlord. So they're our first priority. But we also have a due diligence to also take care of the tenant, and also have our communication channels open for them as well, because they're living in the property. We want to encourage them to be able to let us know if there's something wrong there. Because, for instance, a small water leak, if you don't like your agent and they're not answering your phone calls, not getting back to you, you're not going to worry about it. A small water leak can turn into a major disaster. It can cost, thousands of dollars in repairs if it's not acted on straight away. So it's case by case. Whatever happens, we deal with it in the best way we can. But at the end of the day, we want the best for our landlords, and with tenants, I've got tenants that I had 20 plus years ago, and I've given them the opportunity. They've thanked me very much for letting them move into a property. They've done the right thing. They've got to the stage where they've had enough money saved up, they've bought their own home, and then their next step is they've bought an investment property. And who have they come to look after them? They've come to me. So seeing that total turnaround is a compliment, that they entrust their property to me to look after them. So that is wonderful for me. That really warms my heart when that happens. So
and that's where and that's where the landlords, yes, we work for the landlords, as you mentioned. Then what strategies do you use to minimize vacancy rates and ensure properties are tenanted quickly?
Look, I'm a firm believer of not putting someone in for the sake of getting a letting fee, because it will cause problems later on. So we really do check it out. At the moment, the market is a little bit challenging because we're moving into Christmas and the market does slow down. So anyone that was thinking of moving, the next 2 weeks is probably, the last time that they will be actively looking for a property. Usually quietens right down before Christmas. People are going on holidays. If they've wanted to get into an area for the school zoning, they would have done it a month or two ago. But the other thing that we're seeing is, and I was explaining to Peru before, is that with the supply and demand earlier in the year, there was not enough stock. So that caused a lot of the rental prices to go up quite dramatically. On average in Wyndham, they went up between $50 and $70 minimum. So those properties that then did go on the market for sale, because the owners couldn't afford to have them anymore, those tenants then turned around, and they're starting to now, in the last 3 months I've seen it, they've actually looked at it and thought, gee, that rent's really, really high. Maybe I can afford to buy my own property. So we're now seeing tenants exiting the market and purchasing their own properties to live in. So at the moment, it's quite slow. The demand isn't as high as what the supply is.
And what are the vacancy rates in Wyndham?
Vacancy rates in Wyndham at the moment are probably about 1 to 2%. It's still, it's still healthy, but I mean, say 6 months ago, you would have a property on the market for rent, and there would be 40 people turn up at an open. Now you're lucky, as long as the property is priced right, you're lucky to get between 3 and 15 people at an open. That's the difference. Some opens you don't get anyone, but I mean, you act on those ones straight away, because that tells you that, the property price needs to be looked at. The sake of reducing it by $10 is only a loss of $520 for the year, opposed to it being on the market 4 weeks too long, and they lose $2,000. So you've got to look at all of those things.
Yep, Carmen, you have decades of experience in property management, and you just operate in Wyndham. Out of curiosity, as you said that there's not much because of Victorian laws and everything. It never came in your mind to expand to other suburbs as well, or take your services to interstate as well? Because move where buyers, investors are moving.
No, I haven't. I do manage right through to the city. I have got a couple of properties in the CBD and in suburbs between Wyndham and the CBD. But I'm a great believer of giving the best service, and I think you can only do that when you are operating in the area, you're managing in the area, in that direct area, because you can get to a property straight away if something's wrong. If a property is an hour away, you can't just be there at a blink of an eye. And you don't know the trades as well. I've got trusted trades that I use that won't service those areas. So to give my clients the best service, that's why I've decided to clearly define my areas just being Wyndham. Yeah.
Amazing, Carmen, and that shows your contribution to the community as well, because I've seen you in a lot of community events as well. So I met you a couple of times. We had a quick chat around it. So now, one of the questions that I got multiple questions related to this, and I will just summarize it. The question is, what's the strangest request you have ever had from a tenant or landlord? How did you handle it?
Okay. I think the strangest, the most strangest thing that I've had from a landlord was I took over a property from another agent, and the property needed quite a lot of work doing to it. I've got a really good tenant to move in, and the hot water service wasn't working. And so I said to them, look, I've got a plumber going out. So I had a plumber go out straight away who quoted free of charge, and it needed replacing. This landlord refused to go ahead with the quote. He wanted to get his own quotes. He ended up getting 12 quotes. Under the Victorian law, you know, hot water services come under 24-hour urgent repair. And his answer to that was, why don't you get them to get a bucket of water and they can wash with the bucket of water, boiler kettle. I felt an obligation to that tenant because we had put them in there, I kept managing it for 3 months until the hot water service got done, and then I terminated the management agreement with that client, and explained to the tenant, look, I've only kept it on at this long because I wanted to make sure things were right for you, but I'm sorry, but I can't work with this landlord. If he's not prepared to do the things that need to be done, I will not work with him. So I ended up sacking him, and he rang around a couple of agents, fellow agents in town, and they said, who was managing your property? And they said, oh, Carmen from Wyndham Property Management. And they said, look, I'm sorry, we're not interested on taking you on because we know how Carmen works, and if she has sacked you, she's sacked you for a very good reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that shows. And similarly, anything unique requests, strange requests from tenant?
Requests. Oh, we get strange requests from tenants all the time. You know, silly requests, you know, right from, you know, I've got mosquitoes, what do I do? You know, there's a lot of special things out there that happen in property.
Oh my God. Sorry, I can't stop laughing.
Yeah, I have some crazy suggestions for that, but we'll save it for our wine catch-up, Carmen.
Yep.
So I have a question regarding pets. Because the other day I was having a chat with someone that allowing the pets can give you a better rental return on the property sometimes, but at the same time, how do you balance the maintenance of the property because of the dogs or whatever the pets are damaging the property and smell and all that?
Yeah, so firstly in Victoria, you're not allowed to discriminate for people having pets. You can't say no. You can't say no pets in your ads for rental properties.
And pets, if someone says I have a crocodile as a pet, it's still
okay. What you can, I mean, the only times that you have got those boundaries are like with reptiles and whether they've got a license. Pigeons, you know, you've got to get a permit from council if you've got more than 20 pigeons. You can't have more than 5 chickens, or you can't have you know, a rooster. It's against the law. Yeah, in a residential property. But with normal rentals, with like pets like cats and dogs, we can have that discussion privately with the landlord, and they can say, look, we would prefer not to have pets in our property. We explain to them, look, you know, we can go on the application, but, you know, 6 months down the line, their little boy might say, Mummy, can I have a puppy for my birthday? And, you know, you cannot say no. And my best thing is that it's always best to know what you're getting. So if they have asked for a pet, I mean, you just have to make sure that you have got them to sign a pet agreement, put all the details in there that they've got, it's registered with council. You've got it written in that agreement that the carpets are to be fumigated on exit as well as steam cleaned. That's all you can do, because at the end of the day, you can't say no. They had a case go to VCAT with regards to someone that had a pet on the 11th floor. They had a husky in an apartment, and the landlord said, well, that's cruel. We you know, you shouldn't be allowed to have that there. They went to VCAT and the landlord did not win. You go to countries like China, and I've been to China many times, and they do have big dogs. They do have big dogs in apartments, but they're well trained. You know, so that's acceptable to them.
Okay.
Next, just on that question, what's your strategy if you found out a tenant was secretly keeping suppose a pet giraffe in a townhouse backyard? So if you find somebody has secretly kept it, then what's your strategy?
Okay, I mean, the first thing is to talk to them about it, and talk to the landlord straight away. I mean, there's times when we have to contact the owner and tell them not so good things, but you can't move forward or resolve it or try and find a solution unless you've faced it. So with something like that, I mean, we would really need to look at if it was feasible for that animal to be there. Depending on the animal, I mean, a giraffe, I mean, you'd get in contact with the RSPCA, you know, so, or something like that. But, yeah, look, you just have to face it and then make the decision of what the next step would be to resolve it.
I have a question. This is in relation to appliances and their maintenance. Because it was a very interesting case that happened with a mate of mine who had a home in Point Cook. He moved to another city for work, and he had a great tenant. And then the tenant said that we are not getting enough heating. And then he got a guy straight onto the case, and they found that the ducts were torn from inside. And then they fixed it. And then the heating worked okay. Melbourne needs heating in the winter months, right? Now,
Yes.
the tenant got a big ass bill later on, and they said, look, it's not my fault because the duct was not installed properly, and then we just kept the heating on because we had a young family. And
Yes.
the landlord said, look, we acted straight away as soon as you said. So it became a gray area, and they agreed to disagree, and then it went to VCAT. And it went against the landlord, saying that if you have a proof of maintenance of your heater before the tenant moved in, there is a 2 or 3 years limit within which we accept that if something goes wrong, then there are some laws around it. So have you gone through these things because the landlords think we are acting when we are told, but the maintenance cycles of appliances, etc., no one spends time and money on these things.
Okay, well, that's changed now, Peru, with the introduction of the gas and electrical safety checks.
Okay.
So that has been, and that's one of the good things that has come out of it. The other thing that the tenant could have done was go to the utility company too, to see if they would reduce the account. And ask the agent for a copy of the report from the person that attended to it, and just say, look, you know, both the landlord and myself were unaware until we got our bill that that there was something. It's like when there's a water leak, and you can go to City West Water and ask them to relook at the account, but. That would have been picked up in a gas safety check with regards to it, but heating is a minimum standard in Victoria, and next year, you know, there are minimum standards that they're looking at bringing in October next year. They haven't been passed yet, but one of them is cooling. That all Victorian properties have cooling in them as well. Because that's not a minimum standard at the moment. So there's 4 things that they're looking at coming in October next year. One of them is blind and anchor safety for cords, so children don't, you know, hang themselves or hurt themselves on the cords of blinds. Ceiling insulation, they're looking at insulation being mandatory, and also draft proofing as well as cooling. So they're 4 new things that they're thinking of introducing in October next year in Victoria.
Very interesting and very detailed, because these are the things they are not understandable by a lot of people, because of course it's not their field of expertise, but good to know. I know you
Yep.
have done rooming and Airbnb sort of things in the past, but you don't do it now specifically. But any do's and don'ts which you have to share for the investors or the buyers who might be on these calls listening to these videos later on?
Yeah, look, if anyone's thinking of going into, into rooming, it does come under the Rooming House Act, Caravan Park Act. I would recommend not trying to do it yourself for a start.
Okay.
I would do your due diligence and check out agents that do it, and make sure that you do check them out, because you've not just got one tenant that you're involved with. You've got a number of tenants, and they're all living under the same roof. You also need to take into the equation that you'll be paying all the utilities on those properties as well. I know that, the fashion is now to, have a bungalow or a granny flat out the back, and think I can turn it into 2 investment properties.
Yeah.
But unless it's separately metered, you cannot charge both front and back the utility costs. Even if you write it into as a special condition into the lease, if that tenant doesn't agree, there's nothing that you can do. You can't enforce it. You can't go to VIC, they will go against you. So, you've got to look at all those things. But it only takes one bad tenant out of 4 or 5 different tenancies that you've got under that roof, if you're doing it room by room, to upset everybody else, and to try and get them out. So, it's messy. It can be very, very messy.
Understand.
So just on that, can you describe the worst tenant turned neighbor dispute you have mediated, and how close were you to bringing popcorn and enjoying the show?
Oh, okay.
Harshit, your questions are amusing.
I'll have to think about that one.
No, take your time. It was just, because
I mean, the worst one that I've had in the last couple of years was a tenant that wasn't cooperating, and the neighbour was complaining about him, and the property manager tried to do a routine inspection at the property. He wasn't answering his calls and stuff like that. And then he became very, very abusive over the phone, and I ended up terminating him for intimidation on a 14-day notice to vacate. He was totally disrespectful to staff and very threatening. I went to the property as well, and he had a body cam on the whole time, recording everything. But that didn't even save him, because he ended up losing it on the body cam. So,
just on that, what is the most creative excuse you have ever heard for a late rent payment?
One of them was that their father had died and they had to pay for the funeral, forgetting that they'd already used that excuse probably about 6 times over a 2-year period. So the father had died and resurrected, and died and resurrected, and died and resurrected. So another one's hair extensions. They had to go and get their hair extensions done. Couldn't afford the rent.
I have a question regarding rent vesting as a trend, especially for a lot of younger age groups in 20s and 30s, and also a lot of senior age groups, executives in corporate who are moving around quite a lot. This concept, we are serving a lot of rent investors who are preferring to rent in areas of choice, but then not really getting tied up to mortgages of their principal places. What's your view on that? Because you probably have dealt with a lot of them.
Look, I have. I had a financial advisor that lived on a very big property in Hoppers Crossing that he owned, and he decided to sell that because he thought it was too much money, invested in one place, and
Yep.
to use those finances and diversify in stocks and in investment properties too. We do get, people that owning their own home isn't the be end and end all of everything, and that they can see that they can still have the lifestyle that they want and also give their children what they want by renting a property and not buying a property. They can they can't afford to buy in the southeastern or eastern suburbs, so they rent over there so that they can give their children the opportunity to go to schools over there. Everyone's got different. Younger people, a lot of them live for today and they want the lifestyle. They don't want the commitment of a mortgage and maintenance on a property, so, but then you do get young people. I have got a lot of young investors as well as landlords who are building up their portfolio. They can see that future, and they're in it for the long haul. It's not a short-term thing. It's the long haul of it. They know that they'll have that money at the end of the day, to fall back on. It can be their super. It all depends on what they want to invest their money in and what they want to do with it.
Good insights. It's quite valuable because these perspectives are important for people to at least know and then decide for themselves.
Yes.
There are ways to really optimize your time, money, energy, whilst not compromising on your lifestyles and family needs, and without the burden of serving the banks, as I say.
Yeah. Look, I know with my son, my son was in China for a number of years. He did his MBA over there. And when he came back, the first thing that he wanted to do was to buy an investment property, which he did. And he rents himself. He's now in Sydney and he's paying an astronomical rent in Sydney, but he's got an investment property in Melbourne, which the tenant is paying most of the rent on, and the property prices have gone up. So, he's done well with that. And my daughter, I have put her in contact. It was before you came along, Peru, but I put her in contact with another, buyer advisor. And she's recently purchased or built a property in South Australia, so she has done really, really well with that. So even with my landlords here, I do put them in contact with people that can help them purchase properties interstate as well, with the Melbourne market being the way it is, and also put them in contact with mortgage brokers that can help them.
Excellent. And what's your view regarding commercial leasing? Have you done it in the past?
I have done it in the past. I haven't done commercial leasing for about 9 years. So there's been a lot of changes. COVID hit the commercial sector very hard. And that's come back. That's coming back now. So I think investing in commercial can only get better in the future.
Yep. And when we talk about Wyndham, how do you see that for investors in commercial space?
In commercial space, I think with investment, it would be more in, warehousing and factories more so than retail in Wyndham.
Because
and you
big
can see
distribution centers are there.
You can see it as you're driving out to Truganina, and then it goes right through to Derrimut. You've got all the big game players now having their warehouses out there. Aldi, you've got Woolworths.
Yep.
You've got big organisations, whereas before with a lot of smaller organisations, there is a pocket in Werribee itself down Lock Avenue where there is a lot of factories down there, and also in Hoppers Crossing which are your, plumbers and, mechanics and people
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
But the bigger ones, the bigger factories are the land size is in those areas at Durham and Truganina.
Got it. And over the last 10 years or so, what are the big things you have seen in the property management space, which have changed in Victoria in particular, as the theme for the topic today is?
Okay, property management has become a lot harder in Victoria. It's not just a matter of collecting the rent and doing, a routine inspection. We manage all the compliances now. There's a lot of work that's involved with that. COVID was good because we looked outside of the square and reinvented ourselves as agencies and realised that we could do a lot of work from home because we had to.
Yep.
We had a lot of challenges through COVID. I mean, I was still leasing properties out through COVID. People still had to move. So you still had those things. We weren't as impacted as what sales were through COVID. But now we've seen the opposite of that because with the debt that the state government has accumulated through COVID and everything, unfortunately the landlords have been hit the hardest with everything that's been implemented and to recoup some of that money that they're owing. So that's the hardest part, I think, with it. Because of the workload also, it does put a lot of stress on property managers, and you get a high turnover of staff. Young people can't handle it. A lot of young people can't handle it unless they've got the support. We're a little bit different here in the way that we do things in that we don't do end-to-end property management where you've got one property manager looking after you. We've got a team of people that look after you. So there's always someone in the office who is here to answer questions, to answer emails, to make that phone call. We're not just keyboard warriors. You're not waiting 24 hours for someone to get back to you. So it's task-orientated more so. So I've got one person that I employ just to do routine inspections so that it takes that pressure off the property manager to be there to get on with things and to action things. I don't expect any of my property managers to work on the weekend. So they work Monday to Friday, where most real estate agencies, we've got the property manager also working every second Saturday. So I think their jobs are hard enough during the week, and having done property management myself, I can understand it more than a lot of other people or a lot of other directors that have got real estate companies.
And Carmen, there are so many moving parts, right? So how do you stay updated on changes to the rental laws and regulations? And what impact do you see these changes having in future?
Okay. There was 132 reforms that came in 2020, which were delayed until 2021 because of COVID. Unfortunately, a lot of those changes didn't favour landlords. They favour more the tenants. And again, unfortunately, with COVID, it did impact on VCAT, where no bond and compensation cases were heard. And VCAT at the moment are still 10,000 cases behind. So there's still 2021, 2022 cases that haven't been heard. So those landlords have not been able to recoup the bonds from those tenants that have defaulted or get any compensation. Unfortunately, a lot of those landlords also weren't educated right from the start to ensure that they had a good landlord cover, a landlord policy, insurance policy, because, even though it hasn't gone through VCAT, you can still apply through your insurance company and put a claim in as long as you've got the information there. So those sort of things have impacted a lot on property management. Yeah. Do you mind if I just close this blind?
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
please.
It's just getting a bit dry.
And Puru, just understand that, it's too much to, these rules, government makes those rules, and you already have existing contracts and you have new contracts as well. You have new listings as well. It's quite challenging in the area they operate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a review of your overall position in the portfolio is important. Just like I think as a household, it's a good idea to look at your utility providers, their rates, etc., yearly ones. There might be a lot of plans which would have come in your mobiles, in your gas and electricity plans, which you just have been lazy and not looked at. So you are just paying someone else just for the slackness you are doing. Similarly, as a landlord, it's a good idea to have a touch point with your property manager, look at the type of changes which would have come, like Carmen mentioned about the insurance covers. People just take anything online and then say that, okay, we've got it covered, right? But they haven't gone through what the fine print says.
No.
And also I've seen as an investor, they insure the property at a point in time based on whatever price was in the market, right? But the construction costs have changed. So they haven't revised their insurance premiums in the event, in an unfortunate event of fire or anything. Their property is covered on a price which was on $1 from yesterday for the construction prices, but it's not matching today's dollar. So those little things are important. Treat it as a business you're running when you're building portfolios. Have these checklists every year, or every 2 years, whatever suits you, because it's equally important.
And just Carmen, do you educate your landlord and tenant? Like for a tenant, content insurance, I believe, is a must because that's what it is. For a landlord as well, because there are so many options, so many online things available. And I see that a lot of clients who buy investment property through us, they said, okay, I'll just go and pick one insurance policy.
No, with all my landlords, I do have a landlord's pack, but I do go through those things with them. I normally recommend two insurance companies for landlord insurance, and that's EBM and Terry Shear. And, I also let the owners know, especially when they're moving out of their own home and they've just built a brand new property that they're moving in, that how important it is to contact their insurer and let them know that they're not going to be residing there anymore, that it's not going to be owner occupied. Because if they don't do that and they decide, no, I can't afford to take landlord insurance out, I'll take it out later on. If something was to happen at the property, they void their opportunity to claim because they're only covered when they're living in the property and not when a tenant is living in there. So just a simple little thing like that can really impact on them. But one of the biggest things for landlords with all the changes that came in was the ability to terminate a tenant, if things weren't going right. Up until 2 years ago, we were able to serve a 120-day notice for no specific reason, but that was abolished. So the only time that you can terminate a tenant at the moment, and they're thinking of revising that too, is on the first initial lease. You can terminate it at expiry without a reason. You have to have a reason to be able to get someone out, whether it be rental arrears, whether it's selling the property, whether it's moving in to that property yourself, or because it needs major works done on it. But a landlord might come to me and say, look, what if I say I'm going to move into the property, serve them that, I'm going to move into the property. But if they serve that on them, and even if they serve it on them for sale, they're not able to release that property for 6 months from the date of that notice. So they actually have to be moving in there. And if they get caught, they're fined, plus the tenant can go compensation. You know, so it's a very expensive exercise not to follow the rules. So, and some people aren't made aware of that. So, you know, that's why they're there. So it's very, very important to make sure that the property manager that you've got looking after you has got a knowledge behind them and is up to date with what's happening in the market.
Yeah,
Brilliant. And Carmen, we have just 4 minutes left. And Carmen, I would like to, you know, because you have been in this for multiple decades and, you know, in and out of Wyndham area. Just wanted to know, what was your aha moment in which you felt that, yes, it has been a life changing for the tenant or the landlord because of your presence? What you're proud of, something that you have done?
That's a hard one, Harshit. That's a very, very hard one.
I kept it for the last.
I think a couple of good stories. One was I had an application come in, and it was from a husband and wife, and they had 8 children. And anyway, on the application, she put down, if you'd like to come and look at my property, I'm happy for you to come and see how I live now. So I rang her up that day and said, do you mind if I come over and have a look? Because it was one of my landlords that I managed about 6 properties for him. And I went over there and the house was immaculate. This couple, unfortunately, he had bought a butcher's franchise in Hoppers Crossing, and the books had been cooked and he ended up having to go bankrupt. So they had to, they lost their home. And so I rang the landlord's wife and said, and explained, I said, look, I've been over there and she keeps the property in really good order, and it's not as though she's had, you know, 2 days notice or anything like that. This is how she lives. And they ended up letting her go in there. She said, don't tell my husband, but I approve the applicant going in there. And I felt so good with that. And those people were in there for 14 years and were able to save up money to go into their own home. And most recently, I had a property that was on the market, and it was a higher end of the market. And I had a young couple who applied with 2 children, and it was between them and a couple from Singapore. They were professionals on very high salaries. And the landlord came down to me and said, I would like to give the young family the property, even though the safe bet is the professional couple, but I'd like to offer it to them and give it to them for $70 under what they were asking for, and put them in the home. And they said that the reason they did that is because they knew that they would have a problem getting a property opposed to the Singapore property people. They would be able to get another property at a drop of a hat. And I thought that was really, really lovely that they did that. I've never, ever had a landlord do that for a tenant.
That's so powerful, Carmen. That's so powerful. You know, I loved it. Absolutely. I felt it. Amazing. Amazing. So it's not just as a professional, the social impact that we do, the passion to help, Carmen, because all this, you went over and beyond to help your clients, not just as a, you know, property management. Okay, if it matches Excel sheet, some tools, that's what people do. But you go behind the scenes, understand their story, and work towards that. That's what your style of business is. That's what is the value you bring to the table, Carmen. So
yeah, amazing. and I've got a very good team of staff behind me. So I'm very, very fortunate that I've got the team that I have.
And just reflection of you, Carmen, because they are just, you know, reflecting the energy, your passion, your genuineness, right? So they are just your shadow working, and you guys energize yourself. And that's the impact you're doing to the West Wyndham suburb, right? So, and as you mentioned that you chose to stay there, no matter what business, you had better opportunities, you know the market. right? So you could have gone interstate, but you kept your guard. You continue contributing to society, and you're an active member in Western suburbs, because I've seen you in multiple, council events and everywhere. You are active. You're seen. You are heard. You are visible. That's amazing. Anyways, Puru, over to you. Anything you want to say? Because I loved it. I'm energized.
Absolutely. And of course, I've told Carmen many times, one of the most genuine professionals I've known over the years. I'm very fortunate to be with her in one of the networking groups I go to. And I value that mentoring and chats which I have with her. So anyone looking for a very genuine property manager in Wyndham, absolutely, Carmen is the right person to talk to. Any parting comments for you, Carmen? Because we are already 1 minute past 7:30.
I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity. I was a bit nervous doing this today because I don't like blowing my own horn. So, but I generally am here for my clients, and we do the best we can. Sometimes we can't please everyone, but we try our best. So, and I love Wyndham. I do love Wyndham, and you never stop learning and you never stop changing and evolving, and it's a matter of keeping up with everything.
Okay.
So any
Awesome.
investors, any buying agents watching these videos, looking at buying properties in Wyndham, Melton area, please have a word with Carmen. Your investors, your buyers will be in safe hands. That's all I can say.
Thank you.